When I fell ill, my son said he'd take care of me. Instead, his wife served me cold soup and turned off the heat. One night, shivering in my room, I found a recording on the smart home app that made me call a number I swore I'd never use. I'm 67 years old. I've never told this story before. Not to my friends, not to my church group. But it's been clawing at me for months now, and I need to get it off my chest. Maybe someone else out there has gone through something like this. Maybe I'm not as alone as I feel. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. I knew something was wrong before the doctor confirmed it. My hands were unsteady, my balance fell off, and little things like buttoning my shirt or opening jars became harder. I kept it to myself as long as I could, but eventually I had to tell my son, Michael. He hugged me and said, "You're not going into any nursing home. You're coming to live with us." I cried. I thought, this is what it means to raise a good son. He and his wife, Megan, had just moved into a big house in Allentown. 3 bedrooms, finished basement, new appliances, the whole 9 yards. They turned the upstairs office into a room for me. I was hesitant at first, didn't want to be a burden, but they insisted. At first, things seemed okay. Megan was never warm to me, but she played polite. She made a casserole the first night I moved in. She asked if I needed help setting up my room. But it didn't last. The first time I really noticed something off was maybe a month in. I'd asked for a blanket, just an extra one. She looked annoyed. Didn't Michael turn the heat on upstairs? It's not that cold. It was January. The heat had been on. The next night, it wasn't. I checked the vent. Cold air. I said something to Michael the next morning, and he seemed surprised. Said he'd check it. He never did. Or maybe he did and just didn't care enough to press her. After that, it became routine. I'd wake up cold, layer up, and keep quiet. Meals were the next change. Megan stopped eating dinner with me. She'd serve me food and then take her plate to the living room. Most nights the soup was cold. Once she handed me a bowl of chili straight from the fridge. I asked if it was meant to be warmed. She looked at me and said, "You didn't say you wanted it hot." Michael was gone all day for work. He's an accountant, leaves by 7:30, back by 6 o'clock. And even when I tried to tell him what was going on, he brushed it off. Megan's just stressed. Work's been hard on her. She means well. I wanted to believe him. One day, I asked to review my will. I remembered we'd made changes when I moved in. Michael had found a lawyer who did home visits. I trusted him. Trusted them. I signed papers without asking too many questions. I just remember him saying something about the house and it being a clean way to transfer ownership if something happened. I didn't ask more. I felt tired, sick, scared. Then came the smart home app. Michael had installed one of those systems to control the thermostat, lights, and cameras. One night, around 1 a.m., I woke up freezing. I pulled up the app on the tablet they gave me to try to turn the heat up. I was fumbling through the settings and accidentally clicked on a camera feed labeled Upstairs Hallway. There was a history tab. I clicked it, and there she was, Megan, standing outside my door 2 nights earlier, talking on the phone. She didn't see the camera. I tapped the volume icon. I don't care how long it takes. Once she dies, the house transfers. I made sure she signed that clause. Michael didn't even read it. I just need her to stay here long enough to make it legal. I don't remember breathing. I don't remember crying. I just sat there, listening to her call me a burden. Call me a stepping stone to property. Like I was just a dying old woman in the way of her investment. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't confront her. I didn't tell Michael. I packed a small bag, just some cash, my ID, my medicine, and I stared at my phone for a long time. There was only one person I could think of. Someone I hadn't talked to since 2003. My younger brother, Ray. We stopped talking after our father died. It was a nasty fight. Hurtful things were said. We never made peace. But that night, I needed someone. I needed blood. I called the number. Same area code. Same voice. He picked up. Said hello. I said, "It's me. I'm sorry. I'm in trouble." And he said, "Where are you?" That phone call changed everything. Ray showed up 2 days later in a rusted-out pickup, same one he had when we stopped talking. I hadn't seen his face in over 2 decades, but when he stepped into that house and saw me sitting there in my coat, bags at my feet, he didn't say hello. He said, "Let's go." I didn't leave a note. I didn't tell Michael. I couldn't trust him anymore. He had watched me shrink in that house for months, seen the cold bowls of soup, heard the excuses. Maybe he didn't know every word Megan had said, but he knew enough. And he did nothing. I stayed with Ray in Bethlehem, just 20 minutes away. He lived in a modest 2-bedroom place. Still single, still stubborn. But his guest room was warm, and the food was hot. And for the first time in months, I felt safe. The second night there, I showed him the recording. His face didn't move for a full minute. Then he got up and poured himself a glass of bourbon. "You signed it over?" he asked. I didn't know. I thought it was just estate stuff. I didn't read it all. Ray used to be a paralegal. He still remembered people in the county. The next morning, he made some calls. Got a copy of the papers I'd signed. And that's when it all became clear. The trust Michael and Megan had set up transferred ownership of the house to them upon my death, yes. But there was a quiet clause. If I resided at that address for 12 consecutive months and was declared incapable of independent living, then it could trigger early transfer. They'd slip into ownership automatically, and the estate wouldn't even be involved. I'd moved in 11 months ago. Ray slammed the papers on the table. "They're waiting you out. 1 more month. And they're accelerating it with medical proof. That's why they didn't want you talking to anyone. That's why they didn't want you warm, rested, sane." I wanted to believe Michael didn't know, that it was all Megan. But even in my gut, I knew better. He'd stopped visiting my room. He never stood up to her. He let her do this. Ray said we could go to a lawyer. Contest it. Prove coercion, manipulation, maybe elder abuse. But we needed more than a hallway audio file. We needed proof that Michael knew, that Megan acted on both their behalf. And we needed witnesses. So I started calling friends, old neighbors, my pastor, even my doctor. I told them everything. Some were hesitant. Some said they had felt something was off. One nurse from my old clinic told me Megan had canceled 2 appointments I didn't even know I had. Meanwhile, Michael started calling, then texting, then Megan. They wanted to know where I was. I didn't respond. The texts turned from worried to angry fast. "Michael, you left without saying anything. You scared us." Then, "Mom, what are you doing?" "Megan says you took documents from the house." Then, "You're acting irrational. You need help." That last one broke me. "You need help." As if I was the crazy one. As if I was the one scheming. Ray told me not to respond. They're building a paper trail. If they can paint you as unstable, they can lock in that clause. And then it got worse. One afternoon, someone from Adult Protective Services showed up at Ray's door. They said they received an anonymous tip about an elderly woman being kept against her will and mentally confused. Ray stood on the porch, arms crossed, and said, "She's in there drinking tea and watching Judge Judy. Want to come in?" I had to sit down with them, answer their questions, show them my ID, prove I wasn't being held, that I was mentally competent. After they left, I asked Ray, "Do you think they'll stop?" He looked at me, dead serious. "No, they're not going to stop. They've waited too long for that house. They thought you'd just fade out. But I wasn't going to fade. I'd raised Michael with love. I gave everything to him. I thought that meant something. Now I realized I wasn't just fighting for my rights. I was fighting to make sure no one else ever felt this way. Unseen, betrayed, frozen in a house meant to be their safe place. That's when I decided I wasn't going to just escape. I was going to expose them. I didn't expect Megan to show up at Ray's house. It was a Sunday morning. Ray had gone to the store. I was folding laundry in the guest room. When I heard the knock, I thought it was the mail. But when I opened the door, there she was, standing there like she hadn't threatened my life behind a wall. "Hi, Lorraine," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "Can we talk?" I didn't let her in. I just stood there. She stepped forward like she might try to invite herself. "I just want to clear the air. I think there's been a misunderstanding." I said nothing. My hands started to shake, not from the Parkinson's, but from rage. She continued, "Look, I know things weren't perfect. I know we had our moments. But Mike's a mess. He's been crying. He thought you were happy with us." I laughed in her face. Not a big laugh. A bitter one. She didn't flinch. "I don't know what you think you heard," she said, "but that app is buggy. Sometimes it picks up weird stuff from other devices. You probably got a neighbor's audio. We don't even." I closed the door. Locked it. When Ray got back, I told him. He was furious. "She's testing the waters. Seeing if you'll back off. We need to hit first." We set up a meeting with an estate attorney. This one wasn't recommended by Michael or Megan. This one Ray found through a former client. She was sharp, cold. A pit bull in pearls. She listened. took notes, then said, "Do you want to go after them publicly or quietly?" I said, "I want it to hurt. Like it hurt me." She nodded. We started building a case. She pulled the original trust documents, flagged the mental incompetence clause as predatory. Ray's friend at the clinic gave a sworn statement saying Megan had blocked 2 of my appointments. A former neighbor, a retired teacher, agreed to testify that Megan often left me alone for hours without heat. And then, we got a break. The lawyer got access to the smart home service logs. It showed user logins, timestamps, and IP addresses. Megan's account had turned off the heat in the upstairs zone every night from 10:30 p.m. to 6 a.m. for weeks. Every night, but the ones Michael was home late. But it was one specific entry that cracked everything open, a login at 2:03 a.m. 2 weeks before I left, accessing the hall audio file. It was Michael's account. He had listened to the recording, the one where Megan said, "Once she dies, the house transfers." He knew. He knew everything. And he stayed silent. That changed the game. Now we had proof not just of neglect, not just of manipulation, but of knowledge. He knew what she said. He knew what she planned. And he let it happen. I cried when I saw the log. I don't even remember doing it. Just tears sliding down my face. Ray sat beside me, quiet. He finally said, "You still want to go public?" And I nodded. Going public meant risk. My name. My face. My son's face. But I didn't care anymore. Something had died in me the day I realized Michael listened to that recording and still kissed me on the cheek the next morning like nothing happened. The attorney filed a motion to challenge the trust on the basis of coercion and elder abuse. She advised we hold off on press, yet. But she did suggest we send Michael and Megan formal notice. A legal cease and desist regarding interference with my health care and property. Ray hand-delivered it to their house. He said Megan refused to open the door, but Michael came out looking like he hadn't slept in days. He asked Ray, "Why are you doing this?" Ray told him, "Because someone should have years ago." That same week, I got a call from a woman I didn't recognize. Said her name was Allison. Said she used to work with Megan at a real estate office back in Whitehall. She'd heard rumors that Megan had managed to get her hands on property from a dying aunt. Allison never knew who the aunt was until she saw my name on the preliminary court docket. She wanted to help. She said Megan bragged at work. That she once said, "Old people don't read the fine print. All you need is a few good signatures and a lawyer who doesn't ask questions." Allison sent over emails Megan had forwarded to herself from her work computer, drafts of a revised will for me, with lines like "client no longer mentally competent, see attached note," notes that didn't exist. Our attorney nearly jumped out of her seat. "We've got them. This is no longer just coercion. This is attempted fraud." We filed for an emergency hearing. My new medical team wrote full evaluations confirming I was mentally sound, stable, capable. It undercut every narrative Megan had tried to plant. Michael didn't show up for the first hearing. Megan did, in a pantsuit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She sat still, stone-faced, while the judge read out the petition. My name, my son's name. The phrase exploitative trust clause rang out like a gunshot in that courtroom. When the judge asked if I had a statement, I stood. My name is Lorraine. I raised my son alone after my husband died. I worked hard, gave him everything I could. And when I got sick, I believed he'd protect me. Instead, I was made to feel small, cold, forgotten. I was being written out of my own life. All I want now is to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else. I sat down. My knees were shaking. My voice had cracked. But I didn't care. Megan stared ahead like she was made of marble. Outside the courtroom, reporters had started to gather. Someone had tipped them off. Maybe Allison. Maybe someone in the courthouse. One asked, "Did you know your son's wife was targeting your estate?" I said, "She didn't do it alone." The hearing became a full trial. Once the emails from Megan came out, her lawyer tried to pivot. Claimed she was exaggerating in private conversations, that it was just dark humor, nothing serious. But the judge wasn't having it. Especially not after Ray testified and walked the court through the heating logs, the medical appointment cancellations, and the smart home activity showing Michael access that audio recording weeks before I left. Then came the testimony from the clinic nurse. She had a folder of missed appointments and emails from Megan asking to reschedule indefinitely without ever informing me. That hit hard. The judge started scribbling. I could see it. The turning point came when Michael finally showed up, pale, hollow. He didn't look at me once. When asked if he had heard the recording, he hesitated. Then he said yes. The courtroom was dead quiet. And what did you do after hearing your wife say that your mother's death would trigger property transfer? Michael's voice cracked. I didn't think she meant it like that. That was his defense. I didn't think she meant it like that. The judge interrupted, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, You had every chance to act. You didn't. That makes you complicit. When the final ruling came down, it was clear. The trust was invalidated. The house was removed from their estate plan. Megan was referred for possible charges, fraud, elder abuse, tampering with medical care. The emails were enough to open a criminal investigation. But it wasn't just that. The story hit the local papers, then the regional ones. Elder abuse hiding in plain sight. My face was in the news, not out of pride, but out of necessity. They ran the whole thing, down to the smart home logs and Megan's audio clip. They blurred out Michael's face, but by then, it didn't matter. People knew. Michael's job? Gone within a week. His firm said it, no longer aligned with their values. Megan's real estate license was suspended pending review. She deleted all her social media. They sold the house within 2 months. Couldn't make the mortgage on one income, especially after their accounts were frozen for the civil lawsuit we filed. Ray and I split the damages. I didn't want the money. I wanted to put it in a trust for people like me who end up depending on family that fails them. I don't speak to Michael. Haven't since the ruling. He sent one letter, apologizing, saying he was manipulated too, that he didn't know how to handle it. I burned it. What people don't talk about is the grief that comes after revenge. You expect the pain before, but what hits hardest is knowing you can't go back. You raised someone, loved them, believed in them, and they chose money over your life. I still get cold sometimes at night, but not like before. Now, when I turn up the heat, I know it will stay on.